Hello Nakamas, welcome to a new video, this time from Megumi from the Jujutsu Kaisen anime. Now let's start. Megumi is a very outwardly stoic, aloof, and calculating individual. He usually has a neutral facial expression that he rarely changes, making it appear as if he takes every situation seriously. This contrasts heavily with Yuji, Nobara, and Satoru's outgoing and goofy personalities, which often annoy Megumi. He's easily irritated, and Yuji has noted that Megumi seems like he's always slightly angry. Even as a child, Megumi was very stern, earnest, and thoughtful, to the point where Satoru questioned if he was a first grader when they first met. He didn't care for his father and assumed he and Tsumiki were abandoned. Megumi understood his situation with the Zenin clan and stood firm that he would only cooperate if Tsumiki were happy as well. Megumi has always been annoyed by Satoru's attitude ever since they first met. He didn't care for the idea of becoming a sorcerer and became more jaded about it over time. By the time Megumi reached middle school, his impersonal attitude had fully set in. He thought becoming a jujutsu sorcerer would be pointless as he didn't see himself as someone who saves others. Uninterested in making friends, Megumi believed the basis of human interaction was avoiding violating someone else's dignity. He would beat up school bullies who ignored this rule to feed their egos, gaining a reputation as the biggest troublemaker in school as a result. Tsumiki wanted him to stop getting in fights, but Megumi didn't listen and wrote her off. Megumi hated bad people with unearned pride just as much as he did good people who were too merciful to the former. Tsumiki was a perfect example of a good person to Megumi, but he would disagree with and get annoyed with her anytime she scolded him for hurting someone bad. After Tsumiki fell into an unending sleep, Megumi realized he was acting immaturely. He knew Tsumiki was choosing to protect and that she believed that his lack of forgiveness was his way of showing kindness. After Tsumiki was cursed, Megumi was filled with regret and found the drive to become a sorcerer so he could save her. As a jujutsu sorcerer, Megumi developed his sense of justice and is steadfast in his interpretation of right and wrong. Like his mentor, Megumi refuses to be influenced by traditions within the jujutsu world. Yuji should have been executed when they first met, but Megumi ignored the rules and made a personal request to Satoru to protect him. Megumi was unsure for a while if he made the correct decision. He was uncomfortable with the idea that he was someone who saved people. He believed saving the wrong people could hurt innocent people in the future, which made saving Yuji a contradictory decision. Megumi learned. Megumi cast aside his uncertainty when he came face to face with the consequences of his choice, Sukuna. He decided the only thing that's fair in life is how it's unfair to everyone, and sorcerers can be a cog in karmic retribution. He wants more good people like Tsumiki to receive fairness, and that's why he'll save people unfairly. Megumi realized that he didn't save Yuji because it was logical, he did it because he didn't want to see a good person die. He knows it was a selfish and emotional decision, but he's okay with that because he's not a hero, he's a jujutsu sorcerer. That is why Megumi never regretted saving Yuji, not even for a second. Being unable to save Yuji or Tadashi Okazaki during the detention center incident left Megumi pondering his role as a sorcerer. He asked Maki what kind of people she wanted to save, only to be annoyed by her response. Megumi and Nobara weren't exactly friends at this point, but Yuji's premature demise brought them closer together. It was the first time either of them lost a friend in battle, and they decided to honor him by participating in the goodwill event to honor their fallen friend, swearing to get stronger no matter what. In response to Tadu's classic, "What kind of girls do you like?" question, Megumi said that he doesn't have a preference as long as his partner is compassionate. He was trying to de-escalate the situation, but this only irritated Tadu due to their opposing personalities. When it came to blows, despite being outmatched, Megumi never backed down. Megumi didn't hold any resentment toward Tadu and was uninterested in a rematch, which disappointed Panda. Megumi didn't have any loyalty to the Zenin clan, so he didn't reciprocate Noritoshi Kamo's familiarity with him. He rejected Noritoshi's belief that as descendants of the big three families, they were obligated to kill Sukuna's vessel. Megumi expressed that he didn't care about being right or wrong and acted only according to his conscience. He told Noritoshi that he would save people unfairly, and if they disagree, they would have to agree to curse each other instead. Megumi was distant with Yuji and Nobara despite considering them his comrades and friends. He was so embarrassed when they visited his middle school that he couldn't speak properly. Yuji and Nobara felt Megumi never shared much with them and hassled him for about his secretiveness. Megumi even blushed when he was reunited with Takeda and was annoyed with Akari Nitta for making him the one to speak with the faculty member. He never shared information on Tsumiki's condition with any of them. Nobara didn't even know he had siblings. Even when Megumi found out Tsumiki could be in danger, he initially refused to involve Yuji and Nobara. They assured him he didn't have to share everything but asked that he depend on them as his friends. This encouragement helped Megumi admit the truth about Tsumiki's condition and his concerns. Yuji and Nobara dismissed the danger of the mission and told Megumi he should have led with that information. Pleased with his comrades' willingness to help him, Megumi smiled. Megumi, who lacks any sort of competitive edge, can feel insecure about his strength as a sorcerer. He made it a point to tell Yuji he would surpass him after the Goodwill event. Pressured by Yuji's rapid growth, he even went to Gojo for training when any interaction between them is a hassle for Megumi. Gojo made Megumi realize his mindset was holding him back from bringing out his best. He relied too heavily on a failsafe and only achieved his growth when he decided to be selfish and visualize a stronger future for himself. This aided Megumi in achieving domain expansion for the first time, while he was untethered and smiling like a madman. Megumi and Yuji have a shared guilt for accidentally incarnating Sukuna. They both accepted responsibility for Sukuna's rampage in Shibuya. While Yuji felt he couldn't return to Jujutsu High, Megumi believed that was a selfish route. He doesn't think anyone can judge jujutsu sorcerers, so they must continually prove their existence by saving people. Megumi told Yuji he could start by saving him, a plea for help to rescue Tsumiki from the culling game. Megumi feels no loyalty or connection to the Zenin clan, treating Tsumiki as his family. The only member of the Zenin clan Megumi interacts with is Maki, and their relationship is more friendly than familial. Maki wanted Megumi to help her by becoming the head of the clan after Noabito's death, but he was completely uninterested. Megumi's reserved personality immediately led him to reject the position, claiming it was too much of a hassle. He isn't very materialistic and social status isn't important to him either, so he couldn't care less about the fortune he'd receive. He told Maki he'd step down so she could lead the clan instead. Even after Maki pointed out several legitimate reasons why Megumi would be a more acceptable head, he continued to stubbornly push back simply because he didn't want to do it. It was only when Megumi realized how important it was to Maki that he accepted. While Megumi cares about protecting those close to him, that same concern doesn't extend to himself. He feels responsible for Sukuna, so he doesn't allow Yuji or anyone else to express concern for him regarding the King of Curses. He and Yuji even argued because Megumi didn't want to hassle their senpai just for his own safety. He told Yuji that line of thinking is selfish and an annoying waste of time. Megumi's desperation to protect others, especially his sister, was on full display when he needed help from Hikari and Karara. Megumi prostrated himself and begged for help. He even used his status as the head of the Zenin clan to win Hikari over. Unlike Yuji, Megumi had zero qualms about killing other humans in the culling game. Megumi's sole focus was saving his sister, and he immediately conflicted with anyone who stood in his way. He even threatened to kill Remi, a weak woman, for leading him into an ambush. When Reggie attempted to recruit Megumi, he felt that Reggie and Remi were wasting his time and they almost instantly came to blows. Megumi always figured Reggie and his group were always using Remi, but she never realized it. When it became clear and she begged Megumi to help her, he told Remi that she was the type of trash who cares more about words than deeds. After making his first ever human kill, Megumi remained calm and trusted in his own judgment. Confident in himself and his allies, Megumi resolved to wave away any difficulties that crossed his path on the way to rescue his sister. Megumi only put his cynicism and mistrust aside in the culling game when Fumihiko Takaba helped him. Fumihiko's eccentric personality reminded Megumi of Tadu, and he didn't laugh at his jokes, but they were still able to communicate and work together. Despite their clashing personalities, Megumi even felt comfortable asking Takaba to try and steal Hazunoki's points, viewing him as a potential ally for the future. Abilities and powers. Overall skill level, Megumi is a grade 2 sorcerer who possesses one of the highest potentials of any student at Jujutsu High regardless of age. He inherited the prized 10 Shadows technique of the Zenin clan and is favored by the strongest sorcerer himself. Satoru believes that Megumi could become as strong as he is and has stated he likely possesses even more skill and potential than Yuji. Maizenin commended him as a genius who started school ranked grade 2. Noritoshi Kamo mirrored the same sentiment, claiming Megumi's age is irrelevant because of his inherited technique, and that he was even more reliable than the drunk head of the Zenin clan. Even Sukuna took a special interest in Megumi due to his unique talents. Megumi is an exceptionally focused person and a highly disciplined combatant. He excels at keeping his cool in even the direst situations. Of all Satoru's students, Megumi is the most level-headed and clever in his approach to every fight. This has translated into an expert degree of understanding when it comes to jujitsu and how to practically apply his own skills. By the time he met Yuji Itadori, Megumi was already capable of summoning several different Shikigami and he had a solid grasp on the 10 Shadows technique. When Satoru left Megumi without much direction in his assignment to track down Sukuna's finger at Yuji's school, he was still able to navigate the mission on his own. Megumi was able to nearly secure Sukuna's finger without issue, but Yuji and his friends accidentally complicated the mission and led to Megumi getting caught off guard by a giant cursed spirit that nearly incapacitated him. During the evacuation of the Aishu detention center, Megumi quickly recognized they had been caught in an unfavorable situation when they stepped into an incomplete domain. Even so, his rational line of thinking led him to use his Shikigami to navigate the facility while leading his allies through it. Megumi's composure was shaken upon being faced with a special grade curse, but he was able to regain focus and switch his priority to rescuing Nobara. Using his arsenal of Shikigami, Megumi was able to track Nobara down and save her. He proved to be the connective crux of this mission, also able to give Yuji the signal to let out Sukuna in order to exorcise the special grade. Megumi and Yuji's plan, however, did backfire and Sukuna was given temporary free reign over Yuji's body, leading to a fight between him and Megumi. While clearly outclassed, Megumi figured he could force Sukuna to repair Yuji's heart if he dragged out the fight long enough. Megumi and his Shikigami were not powerful enough at this point to accomplish his goal, and Megumi's Great Serpent was destroyed as a result. While not fully successful, Sukuna was impressed by Megumi's power and even implied that he could have defeated the other special grade instead of fleeing. This incident made Megumi realize what areas of his skill set he needed to improve on in order to become a stronger fighter. He and Nobara trained with Maki to increase their capabilities in armed and unarmed close combat. It was at this time Megumi realized he could use his curse technique in more inventive ways, such as storing weapons inside it so he can keep his hands free for summoning Shikigami. Megumi couldn't hope to stand up to Aoi to do in their scuffle, but he undoubtedly increased his combat skills prior to the Goodwill event. Megumi fought on equal ground with Noritoshi Kamo during the Goodwill event. Kamo is also someone who inherited a curse technique passed down in the big 3 sorcerer families and is 2 years Megumi's senior. Motivated to protect Yuji from Kamo's traditionalist ideals, Megumi pushed his opponent to the limit and could have come out victorious if not for Hanami's sudden invasion of the event. In their joint struggle against Hanami, Megumi was able to deduce Hanami's weakness while fighting alongside Kamo and Inumaki. He did his best to exploit Hanami's weaknesses and hold off the special grade while teaming up with Maki. They were unable to defeat Hanami, but the duo did hold the special grade off long enough for reinforcements to arrive. In addition, Megumi's deductions proved invaluable for his allies in their fights against Hanami. As Megumi's physical skills continued to grow, the only thing holding him back from his true potential was his own mental restraints, as noted by his sensei. Once Megumi stopped relying on his last resort and let his imagination flow freely, he achieved greater growth in his abilities than ever before. Megumi unleashed domain expansion and like Sukuna believed he could, he defeated a special grade finger bearer with nothing but his own strength. Megumi works well in a group and has always proven to be a valuable asset. His technique allows him to summon a variety of different aids to not only him, but his entire squad. For example, his Divine Dogs allows for easier tracking and Nu provides an option for attacking targets in the air. His value as a squad member was showcased a great deal in not only the Goodwill event but the dire Shibuya incident as well. Megumi had to work together with other sorcerers to survive the perilous battles in Shibuya. He was originally assigned to the Nanami team where he had just as much of an understanding of the situation as Takuma Ino, who is significantly more experienced. As the operation to rescue Satoru began, Megumi teamed up with Yuji and Ino to take down barriers preventing sorcerers from reaching Shibuya Station. Megumi's Nu allowed Yuji and Ino to mount an assault on Shibuya Sea Tower where the barrier originated and they drew the curse users guarding the curtain into a battle. While Megumi initially struggled to find a rhythm fighting in tandem with Yuji, they were able to work it out and defeat Jiro Awasaka, a heavily experienced curse user. Megumi deduced exactly how Awasaka's innate technique worked and created an effective plan that completely defeated the curse user. Ino was heavily injured in his fight, but Megumi was able to rescue him from falling from the tower using Nu and then took him to Shoko to be healed. It was thanks to Megumi's efforts and the versatility of his Shikigami that the curtain was taken down and Ino was rescued. Megumi re-entered the incident and immediately saved the life of Maki, Naobito, and Nanami from the sure hit of Dagon's domain expansion. He entered Dagon's domain willingly and created a physical hole inside the barrier so his allies could escape. His interference halted Dagon's relentless assault with Death Swarm, which would have surely killed all the sorcerers. While everything didn't go quite as planned, Megumi's intervention saved the lives of his comrades. He accidentally let in a reanimated Toji Zenin, who easily defeated Dagon for them. Then Toji isolated Megumi from the rest of the team and the latter immediately realized the amount of danger he was in. However, he was able to survive against the same monstrous physical prowess that overpowered Ino and Dagon. Megumi remained calm and focused, allowing him to stall for time with every move he made. He rationally accepted that he couldn't escape the fight without an injury, so he accounted for Shoko's presence and decided to try and only suffer an injury he could manage. Without anyone else to watch his back, Megumi was exhausted and susceptible to a surprise attack after consecutive fights. Haruta Shigemo slashed him across the back and heavily injured Megumi. Even on his last legs, Megumi was able to keep his opponent at bay and come up with a plan, something Shigemo commended him for. Rather than allow himself to bleed out or get killed, Megumi decided to summon the unstoppable Maharaga to attack both of them. Interested in the young sorcerer, Sukuna rescued Megumi from Maharaga, proving that his decision not to give up was correct one. His injuries left Megumi inactive for the rest of the Shibuya incident, but his value was heavily showcased. Megumi was able to save his allies on numerous occasions and he helped defeat several key adversaries before he was incapacitated. Motivated by the goal of rescuing Tsumaki from the culling game, Megumi continued to advance the applications of his curse technique, which he displayed while skillfully infiltrating the Gachinko Fight Club. He gathered information on Hikari's hideout and put himself and Yuji in positions to complete their task of recruiting him without drawing too much suspicion. When he and Panda were compromised by Karara Hoshi, a third-year Jujutsu high student, Megumi acted quickly so that they didn't derail the mission. Karara's technique is particularly complex and most people can't even begin to understand how it functions, but Megumi was able to completely deduce the workings of Love Rendezvous. Not only that, but he was able to outsmart Karara using their own technique and restrain them so he could appeal to them as an ally rather than an enemy. The culmination of Megumi's developments as a combatant was heavily showcased in the culling game, a deadly battle royale between sorcerers. He contended with enemy sorcerers in the Tokyo No. 1 colony after it had already reached a deadlocked point where only some of the strongest players remained. Overpowering Remy was easy for Megumi and he was even able to survive the 4-on-1 ambush she led him into. Not only did Megumi survive an onslaught of explosions from Reggie Star and Iori Hazunoki, but he eliminated Chizuru Hari, a player with 28 points in the process. Megumi easily overpowered Hari on 2 separate occasions using a combination of Jujutsu and Taijutsu. In the second confrontation, Megumi took Hari's life before the latter could even use his cursed technique. By cooperating with Fumihiko Takaba, Megumi was able to execute a plan to separate Reggie from Hazunoki. Megumi was severely worn down from the ambush, but he was eventually able to get Reggie one-on-one and fight on even terms with the incarnated sorcerer. Reggie was a very tough opponent for Megumi. He had more experience as a sorcerer from the past and he possessed an analytical mind that could match Megumi's. Not only that, but Reggie was in peak physical condition compared to his tattered opponent. Despite all Reggie's advantages, Megumi used everything in his arsenal to match him every step of the way, forcing Reggie to recognize his strength. Megumi Shikigami helped him deduce Reggie's technique and he used several deceptions to outsmart Reggie, something Reggie himself specialized at. Megumi proved to be more clever and was able to think several steps ahead of Reggie. He led Reggie into a mental trap where he was thoroughly convinced Megumi couldn't deal a finishing blow. Reggie was severely mistaken and Megumi used this to surprise attack Reggie with Divine Dog after using several near-fight ending strategies as mere diversions. In spite of his depleted stamina and all the other disadvantages he was faced with, Megumi was able to use all of his accumulated experience to definitively defeat Reggie. Immense tactical intellect, Megumi's most reliable and imposing asset as a sorcerer is his mind. He is a young genius, a cerebral fighter whose focus in a battle is to outwit his opponent rather than overpower them. Megumi assesses all threats logically and deals with them in a strategic manner. Using his advanced deducting reasoning skills, Megumi thinks of clever ways to deal with every situation as it comes. This is regularly showcased by Megumi's consistent talent for deducing his opponent's strengths and weaknesses in the heat of battle. Megumi possesses a wealth of knowledge about jujutsu and an expert-level understanding of it, equal to that of full-fledged sorcerers. As a student, Megumi lacks an excess of battle experience but he makes up for the difference with his tactical mindset. His fundamental understanding of sorcery enables him to take the lead on missions, or even go out on his own without much guidance. Megumi was able to give a solid explanation of the basics of curses to Yuji, someone totally uninitiated. In the detention center, Megumi was the only one of Satoru's students who could recognize a domain and assess its threat level while also taking into account its incompletion. Megumi's jujutsu knowledge extends to reading the behavior of fellow sorcerers. Megumi figured out the Kyoto team's objective during the Goodwill event by tracking their movements. Fully aware of how sorcerers tend to view Sukuna's vessel, Megumi quickly realized the Kyoto team was trying to assassinate his ally. As a former associate of one of the big three families, Megumi had prior knowledge of blood manipulation before he fought with Kamo. Quickly after witnessing flowing red scale in action, Megumi noticed his opponent was essentially doping. In order to deal with Kamo's boost in speed, Megumi took a tactical approach. He used a toad on its last legs to distract Kamo and then took advantage of the time gained from this to summon Max Elephant. By using Max Elephant to flood the area with water, Kamo's physical advantage was nullified and he was forced outside into an open space where Nu could capitalize. Megumi generally looks for an opponent's shortcomings to exploit after he's ascertained their abilities. He was able to find the weak point in Hanami's hard shell after noticing that it was invulnerable to all attacks except for Kamo's piercing blood on its eye branches. Megumi considered the possibility Kamo was holding back his strength in their own duel, but he confirmed Hanami's weakness by attacking the eye branches himself. He was unable to use this information to bring down Hanami, but he knew it was important to pass it down to his allies that would encounter the special grade curse later. Megumi also possesses adept analytical skills. This helped him navigate the mystery of the Yasuhachi Bridge-related deaths. He collected information with his team and tried out several different hypotheses until they eventually located the curse's barrier. When faced with the curse itself, Megumi understood logically that it was pointless to think about its behavior too much. However, upon seeing a finger-bearer emerge, Megumi pondered it just enough to figure out Sukuna's influence was the catalyst for the deaths. Megumi's intellectual skills are what empowered him to survive Shibuya. He figured out the mechanics of Awasaka's inverse technique despite its precise mechanics not being apparent at first glance. It initially appeared as if Awasaka could nullify damage, but Megumi knew that technique would be too powerful and used a bluff to get a gauge for his strength. He got Awasaka to admit he couldn't defeat Satoru Gojo, and this helped Megumi narrow down his theories. He figured that something like inverse would be difficult to use on complex techniques like the Limitless. Not only did Megumi eventually deduce the exact details of inverse, but its upper and lower limits as well. Once he figured that out, Megumi utilized a simple strategy where he and Yuji combined weak and strong blows. This was an effective countermeasure that best utilized their teamwork, and it brought down Awasaka quickly. Megumi's advanced understanding of jujutsu enabled him to effectively counter Dagon's horizon of the captivating Skanda to rescue his allies from sure defeat. He was aware that using a domain, even an incomplete one, inside another domain would nullify its user's sure hit effect. He also understood that his domain would never overtake his opponents and decided to focus on creating a hole in the barrier instead. By deluding Dagon into believing he was engaging in a domain tug-of-war, Megumi bought himself enough time to create the escape hole for his team. Faced with an opponent he couldn't physically hope to defeat, Megumi had to rely on his analytical skills. He accurately assessed Toji's monstrous threat and planned accordingly. He was aware he couldn't run from Toji forever and decided to deliberately allow himself to be hit. He focused on redirecting Toji's attack to a non-vital area on his body and achieved this by narrowing the options for his opponent's approach. Megumi goaded Toji into attacking him straight on and then compromised his footing on the approach using his shadow. Megumi's clever thinking allowed him to contain his injury to something that could be healed later, and it allowed him to get a hold of his much faster opponent. One of Megumi's most reliable skills is his ability to focus on deducing opposing curse techniques while fighting them. As he did with inverse, Megumi was able to understand and accurately theorize about Kurara Hoshi's love rendezvous as well. Kurara's technique is a very technical ability that's far more difficult to understand than inverse. By collecting information as the fight began, Megumi noticed that Kurara could repel anything that approached them and they could make things attract to one another. He began working on his theory by testing what could and couldn't approach Kurara, summoning numerous rabbits to cover the battlefield. Using rabbit escape helped Megumi physically see what areas around them could cover, and he used his astute memory to take it in quickly. Working from there, Megumi discovered Kurara's technique marked him and all his Shikigami. The markings led him to theorize the technique was based on a constellation. Thanks to his experience stargazing with Tsumiki, Megumi accurately guessed that Love Rendezvous was based on the Southern Cross constellation. Megumi wasn't sure, but by stating it with confidence, he tricked Kurara into confirming it with their reaction. Their surprised facial expression confirmed Megumi's theory, and Kurara expected him to figure out their technique at that point. Even while under more pressure from Kirara, not only did Megumi fill the conditions to approach them, but he deluded Kirara into believing all his Shikigami had been dispelled. In actuality, Megumi jammed Divine Dog against a wall so it wouldn't be attracted to him and maneuvered his body so that it would only be free once Kirara was between them. Once Megumi let Divine Dog loose, Kirara's technique attracted the Shikigami right to them. Megumi not only deduced the complex technique but he even used its functions to defeat its user. The culmination of all Megumi's mental abilities was on display when he was pushed to his limit fighting Reggie Star. Compared to Love Rendezvous, Reggie's contractual recreation was much more straightforward and easy for Megumi to figure out. Figuring water was a natural countermeasure to Reggie's receipts. Megumi's initial strategy was to distract Reggie with other Shikigami to give Max Elephant an opening to douse Reggie. However, Reggie was a cerebral fighter as well and had more experience. Reggie caught Megumi in a few verbal traps with his deceptions, so Megumi decided he needed to do the same. The key to victory for Megumi was to deceive his far more deceitful enemy by thinking several steps ahead of him. Megumi led Reggie to underestimate him by playing into the notion that he didn't have any big moves. Then he trapped Reggie inside his domain by using a gymnasium to enclose the incomplete barrier and completely took him by surprise. However, Reggie was crafty and turned the conditions of the domain against Megumi, forcing him to carry tons of weight. Megumi countered by making clever use of the shadows of the domain above Reggie to drop the heavy Shikigami right on top him while dousing him in water at the same time. Additionally, Megumi led Reggie to believe that Divine Dog was destroyed and couldn't be resummoned in their fight. Then Megumi used Chimera Shadow Garden and dropped Reggie into a pool of water, two potential fight-ending moves. Reggie survived both, leading him to believe Megumi was desperate and out of trump cards. Unafraid of Megumi's other Shikigami, Reggie thought Megumi's only deception was engaging in a taijutsu fight while fully intending to summon something other than Divine Dog. The true deception was that Megumi could summon Divine Dog all along, allowing it to take Reggie by surprise and deal the fight-ending blow. And that's it for today's video. Subscribe, like and share the video. See you next time, Nakama.